The airline of Portugal. About to be everybody. Peter Greenberg here. Noon in New York. I hope you're having a great time wherever you happen to be on this Thursday, and happy to join you to update what's going on in the world of travel, the largest service industry in the world, obviously crippled by COVID-19, and how we're going to adjust. If you've got any questions for me today, just type them in, and I'll try to handle as many as I can. I have a lot of updates for you, a lot of things we need to talk about, things you need to do, things you need to prepare for, a couple things you need to laugh at, and hopefully we'll get through this. Also, if you have any other questions when we're off the air, you can always email me to peter@petergreenberg.com. That's directly to our newsletter, and we'll answer those questions on the newsletter and also on our radio show, the CBS Eye on Travel show that airs every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. But as we like to say, of course, check your local listings. So let me give you the update first, and we'll go sector by sector, and we'll start with the airlines. Think about this. Since the pandemic started, we've lost 34 airlines. 34 airlines that have failed, gone, not coming back. That doesn't count airlines that have suspended service or that are in the process of being nationalized. But the airlines that have failed, 34 and counting, that's unprecedented right there. The airlines that have suspended service are basically waiting for financing, or in some cases, they could be nationalized. TAP, the airline of Portugal, about to be nationalized. KLM, Air France, Lufthansa, governments taking a stake in their financial bailout. Not a good sign when airlines get bailed out by governments, because if you thought service was bad on the airlines before, wait till the governments get involved, right? But at least they may stay flying. The airlines that have suspended service in many cases have grounded certain planes forever. British Airways literally grounded about 2 weeks ago their entire 747 fleet, never to fly again. That's 31 747s, by the way. Never will fly again for British Airways. Qantas has grounded theirs. Many other 747s have left service. And if you still are like me, if you want to go fly a 747, there are still a few airlines that are doing it. Lufthansa is one of them that are still flying to, I think, Chicago and Los Angeles with a 747, but the pickings are few on that one. Ironically, the A380 has been retired early from many airlines, with the exception perhaps of Emirates. And a lot of them are resting right now in Victorville, California, in the desert at the former George Air Force Base. Very famous quote that I've used many times from Richard Branson, appropriate now in a somewhat ironic way. If you want to become a millionaire, start with $1 billion and open an airline. You'll become a millionaire. He can speak to that personally now, since last week Virgin Atlantic filed for bankruptcy. They're still operating, but they need a huge infusion of cash to keep going. Now, is there any good news? Well, let me give you some numbers comparisons. Back in April, and you usually like to track this with the TSA, how many passengers they're screening every day, how many people are flying. Back in April, the TSA screened only 80,000 people in one day. That's as opposed to a normal day of 2.5 million. Last Sunday, it got as high as 831,000. So 10 times more than April, still two-thirds under what it should have been, but at least those numbers are growing. The date we all have to be worried about, and I mean all of us, is September 30th. And the reason for that is that's the day that the Government CARES Act, which essentially bailed out a number of airlines, the big airlines here in the United States, and required them to keep everybody on payroll, those provisions run out on the 30th. And we already know that United, American, and Delta have essentially told about 80,000 of their employees that they could be without a job on October 1st. But it's more than just the furloughs. American Airlines, there was a leaked memo. They're going to drop another 30 cities in terms of their route network on October 1st. American already has dropped a number of their key international routes from the West Coast. They no longer fly to Hong Kong. They no longer fly to London. It's crazy how many routes they've dropped. And that's sad too. How many countries are reopening right now? Well, it doesn't really matter if we can't get there. And thanks to the EU, they have banned us from all the European countries, most of them anyway. Uh, the Caribbean, 31 million people went there a year ago today versus zero today. So you can imagine the impact there. And as they try to reopen, doesn't last very long. We saw it happen in the Bahamas. They opened, had to shut back down again. Now they're sort of reopening, but the quarantine rules are in effect. And in many cases, those quarantine rules require you to quarantine for 14 days, which sort of doesn't really help you if you're going on a week-long vacation. So we have to watch that country by country, and things change by the hour, literally by the hour, uh, not just in the Caribbean, but the rest of the world. Uh, the airlines themselves, we talked about the bailout. In April, Delta, American, and United were literally losing, bleeding $100 million a day. In their second quarter earnings a couple of weeks ago, Delta actually boasted they're doing much better. They're only losing $27 million a day. We've gotten to the point now, and it's going to be with us for quite a while, where we define a successful airline by which can lose money longer. It's as simple and as disturbing as that. So keep that in mind. I know a number of you, actually, it's more than just a number of you, it's a lot of you, are very upset about your inability to get refunds from the airlines on trips that the airlines themselves canceled, and they violated the DOT rule in doing that. For those of you who don't know what the DOT rule is, the U.S. Department of Transportation, here's the rule. And this has nothing to do with pandemic, it's any time that an airline cancels the flight that you're on, not when you cancel it, but when they cancel it, then you are entitled to a full refund back to your original form of payment, no matter what you paid for your ticket, no matter how the ticket was booked, even as a non-refundable ticket. A lot of airlines tried to play games with that, saying that if they could rebook you within 5 or 6 hours, they didn't have to pay you. Garbage, they do. The real problem for most of you who were trying to go to Canada or who were flying through Canada is that even though the DOT rule applies to any airline flying to or within the United States, Air Canada and other Canadian carriers decided to hide behind Canadian government rules that did not require them to give you money, but just to give you vouchers. And as so many of you have mentioned, and you're absolutely right, you cannot pay your rent with a voucher. I'm sad to say that the cases in Canada are in court, and they may last longer than your voucher. So be aware of that, and know that it's not in your favor on that one. But in the U.S., you have rights. The airlines are not going to volunteer them to you. If you're watching me right now and the airline canceled your flight and still refused to give you a refund, keep calling them, ask for a supervisor, remind them of the DOT rule, and then write a letter to the U.S. Department of Transportation Office of Consumer Affairs. Copy me, Peter at petergreenberg.com, and we will also get into it. But just know that that's what's going on out there. Now, I mentioned to you the number of people traveling, at least at U.S. airports, is about 1/3 of what it used to be, but it's 10 times more than it was in April. Here's a somewhat sobering statistic. The TSA has reported that the number of gun seizures at airports has tripled. That's comforting. I just thought I'd mention that for no other reason than it's disturbing. Now, the middle seat. Let's talk about the dreaded middle seat. A number of airlines, JetBlue and Delta to name just two, have made public statements that they are not going to book. They are intentionally keeping that middle seat open unless you're traveling with your entire family and want it. But as a general rule, they are not going to sell that middle seat. They'll be okay to fly at 60% load factors without that middle seat being filled. The other airlines, American and United, have ignored that and in fact have basically said they think it's a publicity stunt and they're going to sell that middle seat. Now, it's just the optics here. To be fair, United does have a point. Social distancing in an airline cabin are somewhat mutually exclusive. The actual distance between you and the window seat and the guy in the aisle seat, even with the middle seat blocked, is only about 23 inches. That's less than 2 feet. That's not 6 feet. And that doesn't count the 14 inches of bad space between you and the guy behind you who just sneezed. So understand that it's the optics here, but the optics do work when you think that the number one reason for people booking Delta right now that they give as why they book Delta is the blocked middle seat. Delta said they're going to keep that middle seat blocked through the end of September. JetBlue says through October 15th. But remember, October 1 is the dark day in the airline business where the airlines as we know it are going to change. They're going to get smaller, they're going to drop routes, and they're going to drop employees. Not a pretty picture. A number of airline employees have also taken an early out, an early departure package. 17,000 of them already have done that at Delta, but there are 20,000 employees at American still at risk, and some employees certainly at United. As of 36,000 of them, that's more than half their workforce. So be prepared. Let's talk about hotels. And by the way, if you've got questions, type them in. You see that on the left if you've got some questions you want to do, and I'll get to them in a second. But I want to get through just the overview here. Hotels. Most of them have not reopened. In China they have. But in this country, the reason why they haven't reopened is not just because not a lot of people are flying. It's because it's not the management of the hotels that's at risk. It's the ownership. They can't maintain their debt service. They've missed their payments. The owners have missed their payments on the actual real estate, and many will not reopen. That also applies to restaurants. In New York City alone, where I'm talking to you from right now, more than 1,000 restaurants have closed that will never reopen. Earlier this morning, it happens every Thursday, the U.S. Department of Labor reports how many people have filed for unemployment benefits. This morning, for the first time since the pandemic started, it's under 1 million. Last week it was like 1.3 million. This week it's about 960,000. But we need to put that in perspective. Number one, the fact that they filed for the unemployment benefits doesn't mean they're getting any money. And we all know that a lot of benefits run out this month or already have run out. We're waiting for Congress to see what they're going to legislate, if anything. But of all those numbers of people who were filing for unemployment benefits, an overwhelming number are in travel and tourism. And at least 1/3 of those jobs, just like the restaurants, are probably not going to come back. So it's not a pretty picture. Cruise lines. You're seeing all the stories about the cruise lines voluntarily continuing their suspensions of cruising through the end of October. Now there are going to be 3 words I'm going to share with you. Let's get real. Cruise lines are not sailing at all this year. That means not just through October 31st, through maybe the end of December, early January. And that's because of 2 things. The Centers for Disease Control still has a no-sail order that's been extended through October anyway, and will probably be extended again. It requires the cruise lines to come up with comprehensive plans to redesign their ships, their floor plans, their protocols, their procedures, their disinfectant policies. Large groups of social gatherings in confined spaces doesn't necessarily make the CDC happy. But there will be cruising next year. In fact, the forward bookings for 2021 are almost near levels that they were this year for last year. So that's hopeful signs for the cruise industry. However, and this is the big however part, without widespread, reliable, and rapid testing, take the idea of the vaccines and put it up on a shelf. But without reliable, rapid, and widespread testing, where you can get results within 3 minutes, no one's going anywhere. No one's going anywhere. That's to European countries. This is applied to travelers anywhere, including cruising. And when it comes to cruising, when they do get that widespread, rapid result, accurate, reliable testing, then cruise ship passengers will be tested at probably 90 different times during a 7-day cruise, every time they get on and get off the ship, every time they come into a dining room or public facility on the ship, every time they go on a shore excursion. But it's not going to be ridiculous. It will not be intrusive. It'll be sort of like what they're doing now at some of the airports, taking your temperature. But taking your temperature is not a reliable test. You can be asymptomatic and still walk on and infect others. But reliable, widespread, rapid result testing, that's what's going to get the cruise ships literally back in the water. And the saddest note that I can share with you about cruising, and I love to cruise. I live on a boat. So, you don't need an industrial strength spatula to get me out of the water. But the saddest part for me right now is watching the videos, which you can see on YouTube, by the way, taken by the crew, of ships well-known cruise ships with well-known cruise names and well-known cruise lines, with video taken by the crew of them on their final cruise being basically beached at shipyards in Turkey to be completely dismantled, torched, and scrapped. So if you really want to be depressed, go to YouTube and watch that. It's emotional and sad. Uh, it's and unintended earlier in the year, but now we're talking about 24 ships to start with that are going to be completely sent to the breakers as we're speaking right now. So while there are no cruise ships sailing in the world with passengers, there are some that are sailing. And you know where they're going? For their final sail to places like India and Turkey, where the blowtorches are already being operated. But then again, it's all about the testing. Countries reopening, it's a crapshoot, guys. Croatia's open right now. Parts of Serbia and Macedonia, a couple of countries, island nations in the Caribbean, but by and large, and Mexico's open right now. But by and large, this changes by the hour. I've said it before. You need to really, call and get two opinions, right? Don't just take one as to what's changing. Again, this may be our forced gap year, at least for international travel, which is one of the reasons why we're rediscovering America and getting back on the road. But that's a whole other issue. I've got some questions to answer, and of course, I've got some here. And let's see what we got here. I'm trying to go online here. Oh, here we go. Here's one from Lotte who goes, good to see you. Happy trails. Happy trails to you, Lotte. Alfredo Gonzalez, my friend. How are you? Thank you for writing in. Everybody's saying hi. I love it. Richard Gaines just asked a question which I think I just answered. Cruising done for the year? They may get one cruise in the Galapagos. They may get one cruise done in parts of Europe. But for the U.S. market, for all intents and purposes, Richard, it's a done deal right now. They will cruise. They're going to come back and do it. And remember, there are a lot of you who've never been on a cruise ship who would probably say to me right now, and by the way, you have said this to me right now, and for the last 4 months, you couldn't pay me to go on a cruise. Okay, I get it. I understand it. However, what keeps the cruises alive are the huge reservoir of repeat cruisers who love their cruise ships, who have a sense of entitlement about those ships, who cannot wait to get back on them, and that will keep them going until everything else can be put in place. But Richard, to your question again, for all intents and purposes, this year's done. Here's one from Lorene, who Lorene says, is it safe to stay in a hotel? I'll give you a qualified answer. You need to call ahead, ask them what their cleaning protocols are. The major brands, Hilton, Marriott, Hyatt, Intercontinental, they've all partnered with major educational institutions and hospitals, whether it's the Mayo Clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins, you name it, to come up with cleaning protocols that will really make a difference. You'll notice a lot of changes in your hotel room. No paper products anymore, no tent cards, no magazines, and no coat hangers, nothing that, it's all about any touch point that your hand's going to be touching. You'll notice in many cases the policy is that the housekeeping will not be coming into the room during your stay. Hilton actually puts a seal on the door after they disinfect the room, and that seal can only be broken by you. So the answer is have that conversation. Don't just take a corporate mission statement to be true. Call ahead and ask them exactly what they're doing, and then you know what? I do it. I don't have a problem with that. Let's keep going down here. Here's one from Gary who says, how safe is it to fly? Well, I'll tell you. I think it's very safe to fly. The airplane cabin, the high energy and efficient HEPA filters do a great job. They take out more than 99% of the particulates and the bacteria. I actually can tell you that about 2 weeks ago, I took my first flight in over 5 months. Something that's ridiculous for me to say that I've only taken one flight in 5 months. Usually it's ridiculous if I only take one flight in 5 days. I usually live on the planes, right? I took a flight. I couldn't find the right nonstop from New York to Florida. I decided to take our radio show down to broadcast from a hotspot. After all, travel's news, and that's what we cover. But I did find a nonstop from Islip Airport, one of the great under-celebrated airports in New York to Tampa on Frontier Airlines. It was less than one-third full. It was a brand new A320 that they went and retrieved off the desert floor to bring back into service. It was booked, I think, 51 people out of 186. The plane was spotless. Frontier, by the way, took my temperature, and down I went. And 2.5 hours later, there I was in Tampa at an airport that was essentially deserted, and no problem. And basically 40 hours later, after broadcasting, came right back up. So I didn't have a problem with it. I would get on a plane tomorrow. I plan to be on a plane in about 10 days to finally go back to my office in Los Angeles, where I hope they still remember me. And I'm not worried about it at all. I'm really not. Practice the basic protocols, right? You're going to wear a mask. This is not a political issue. This is an intelligence issue. Be intelligent. I might even wear gloves. But I'm not going to walk on the plane like looking like Dustin Hoffman in the Hazmat movie. I am definitely going to, read. I'm going to watch something. I'll bring my own food on board because remember they're trying to make sure there's no contact or as little contact as possible between the flight attendants and the passengers. And remember, in many cases there's no booze. So some passengers are trying to BYO and the airlines are trying to cut down on that. But in any case, plan ahead. You're going to be fine. We've got some more questions. Do you think companies like Greyhound will go under in a world of having to socially distance? Well, it's not just Greyhound, it's Amtrak too. Amtrak is basically operating by intent at 50% capacity, so there'll be nobody sitting next to you unless it happens to be a member of your family or significant other. They actually have a great deal right now on Amtrak where they're going to send you your own private roomette, right? That's your own room, your own bed, your own bathroom at 50% off. And that sale's going through, I think, this Saturday. And what a great way to see the country now. Take the Sunset Limited. Go all the way across from New York to LA if you've got the time. But the question about Greyhound and the other bus companies is, if you go back to the old days of what a bus company was, and this is where I'm displaying my age for some of you who are watching, the image of George Raft as the driver with a smoke-filled cabin and a drifter drooling next to you. Those days were gone before the pandemic. Greyhound has a relatively new fleet, all leather seats, Wi-Fi, modern buses. I would have no trouble taking a bus. However, it all depends on economy and what people can afford. Look, we're going to see more bankruptcies. We're going to see more complete closures. This isn't going away anytime soon. Tour companies and in destinations that depend on airlift, when there's now no airlift, have nowhere else to go. They don't have a plan B. They don't have a treasury in those companies that just prints more money and issues $600 a month checks to people. These are countries where you can really connect the dots and realize that without us there, without travelers arriving, people can literally not put food on their table. And this is where governments become destabilized, and we could see a lot worse before we see a lot better. But I don't want to say that Greyhound is going to be the tipping point. It's not. But for the moment, I would support every company I can. They're doing the best they can. And I don't see any incidents right now or any reports of COVID cases directly connected to Greyhound. Let's keep going here. What about the Turks and Caicos? Is it safe? The Turks and Caicos has reopened. But basically, they've reopened under 50% capacity, meaning everything down there is going to be half full, which means there's nobody to be next to you. And this also applies to the public areas like beaches and pools and pool bars. But the guys I know who are running tourism down there, and by the way, that's their economy, they're very well aware of what they need to do. I would have no trouble going down there right now. And here we go. Oh, thank you, Molly, for missing me in Tennessee. I'll come down anytime you want. Do you think we will be allowed, this comes from Judy, do you think we'll be allowed in Europe in late 2021? In late 2021? You bet. You're going to be in Europe by March. Again, it's not about the vaccine. We all want a vaccine. I get it. But let me share with you some anecdotal, just my feelings on this. What's the overriding lesson, for those of you who ever saw the movie, of the movie Saving Private Ryan? Ready? Not a good idea to be in the first wave. So just because they're going to have a vaccine, if they're going to have one, doesn't mean you want to be first in line to get it. What were the clinical trials like? Did they take enough time to test it? Do they understand different groups and how they react to it? So, assuming we get a vaccine, great. I'm still going back to testing. So the answer to your question, Judy, about whether you think we'll be in Europe by late 21, you're going to be in Europe by March of 2021 because my money's on testing, not the vaccine. If we have, again, reliable, scalable, rapid result testing that can be administered by anybody to anyone repeatedly at different departure and touch points, we'll be back in Europe. Alfredo says, so demand will come back soon, but we will have less seats to sell. Will prices go through the roof? This is the interesting part. The travel marketing playbook has to be thrown out the window. And the reason for that is if we go back to 9/11 or after the recession in 2008, 2009, even when the volcano erupted in Iceland and shut down travel for 5 days, the travel industry thought that their salvation would be to discount their way out of those problems. And to a certain extent, it worked. What do you think the airfare was a month and a half ago from Fort Lauderdale to Los Angeles on JetBlue? The one-way airfare. You ready? $12.87. Did JetBlue fill the plane? Not even close. It didn't drive any traffic. Why? The worst four-letter word that starts with F. Fear. You can't discount your way out of that. So the airlines figured out, at least for the short term, that the only people who were traveling were the ones who had to travel. So fares were adjusted up. So in many cases, the airfares right now are where they were about a year ago. So it's not about the discounting of fares. It's about the guarantees that people are going to want and need before they ever leave their house to go to Sheboygan, Wisconsin, or to Shanghai. And what that's going to be is in the area of two things. One, I already said, the testing. And two, is going to be, I mean, obviously the cleaning protocols, but and then three is the one that nobody's talking about, but everybody needs to talk about it. And most of you were affected in a bad way because of it. And that's, I have no other word to say, the garbage of travel insurance. Most of you make your reservations online. And what do you determine when you do that? You cannot finish that transaction until you either opt in or opt out of travel insurance. You don't even know what you're buying, but they're saying you're going to get peace of mind. Really? Okay. So people did it, right? And then they found out when COVID-19 hit that on page 95 of the insurance company policy website, which nobody ever gets to even page 5, was the paragraph that said, oh, coverage is excluded for COVID-19 or pandemic. So how much do we hate insurance companies right now? Could it be this much? So, necessity being the mother of invention, there will be, my prediction, insurance companies that will now write policies that will cover you for pandemic. There will be countries that are already saying they will pay your expenses and fly you home if you contract the virus while there. We're going to need those guarantees over and above anything else before we really want to go somewhere, because the subtext that nobody really wants to talk about is not whether I want to go anywhere or not. We all want to go. It's in our cultural DNA to travel, right? We need to travel. The subtext is, I don't want to go somewhere and be unable to get home or be stuck on a ship in Yokohama for 3 weeks with other infected people. Right? Okay. So insurance companies that are smart, and the premiums might be higher, but I pay them. At least I know what I'm getting. Right? From this moment on, nobody buys travel insurance unless the coverage is included, because otherwise it's useless with a capital U. All right? Here's one from Gary Zimmerman. Which airlines will go bankrupt? Well, a better question would be which airlines won't. Now, going bankrupt doesn't mean they're going to stop service or they're going to fold the tent. But look, we lived through airline bankruptcies in this country for many, many years. I mean, American, United, Delta all declared bankruptcy, and they're still flying. They all came back. The airline that I flew, there's so many airlines that have declared Chapter 11. That's not the point. The point is, how are they going to restructure, and how are they going to come back? And right now, they're going to come back smaller. And to answer Alfredo's question, will prices go through the roof? They're going to go through the roof in the cities that get diminished service. It's as simple as that. And for the moment, that's going to be a lot of cities. So we should be prepared for that. Uh, Here's one from Brian who says, American Airlines moving from my 7 a.m. flight to 11:45 tomorrow. Can they just do that? Hard to complain though. $66 round trip. Well, there's your $12.87 Fort Lauderdale to LA flight. American also has a flight right now, round trip from LA to Austin for under $50. So they're just throwing stuff out there now because nobody's flying, right? And the answer is, yeah, the airline can do that because they're rebooking you within 6 hours. That's an internal policy on American. However, let's say, forgetting what you paid for the airfare, Brian, that by moving you to 11:45 tomorrow, they ruined your reason to go from Dallas to Las Vegas. Well, what have they done? They canceled your flight. There's the DOT rule. You can get a full refund of your whopping $66, but that qualifies. The airline, look, if the airline makes a move on your schedule, that means in the process of doing that, they cancel the flight. So your rights are preserved. Okay? Here's one from Gary. He says, will cruise lines extend the credits again? Yes and no. Some have extended credits through 2022 already because they realize how many people plan for cruises, and it's not a last minute discretionary thing. People plan. My guess is they will extend the credits again, in terms of maybe another 6 months. Here's one from Mary who says, what's your prediction for business travel rebounding for the USA? Within the US, it will come back. It will. But again, every corporation right now that I know is not letting their people fly for business. Why? The lawyers, liability, no guarantee. And the employees don't want to fly without a guarantee. And many states don't want you to show up without quarantining for 14 days. Beware the law of reciprocity. Everybody's doing it now. We're not the 50 United States anymore. We're 50 individual states, 23 of whom are somewhat moronic, who think that not wearing a mask expresses their freedom and independence. It expresses something else, and we know what that is. Stupidity. But that's what's keeping us from going to Europe right now, because the EU saw the spike in cases in so many US states. They don't want us. So there will be a rebound in travel in business when we get what? Testing. Everybody's hoping for this miracle vaccine. I hope we get it. But the answer right now, from a practical point of view, is testing. Here's one from Max. Thank you, Max, for that. Max is writing from Fire Island, where I should be today. Nancy says hi from Minnesota. Tammy says, even if we travel overseas, we're not sure what's open right now. Well, yeah, you are sure what's open. You can go to our website, petergreenberg.com. We have a list of those that are open, but I give you the caveat, it changes, right? It changes. Here's one from Nancy who says, love river cruising. They're in the same boat, so to speak. Sherry says, there were coat hangers in my room in Seattle near the airport. Okay, well, some people didn't get the message. Okay, here's one from Jeannie who says, not a question but a comment. I'd love to see some data about the different airlines and how they compare to each other in terms of sanitation and air filtration. Actually, I did that story, and you can see it on our website. I also did it for CBS Sunday Morning, so take a look. The airlines are doing a relatively good job because, remember, if you take an airline like Southwest, prior to the pandemic, they only flew one airline type, right? It was a 737. They prided themselves in being able to turn a plane in 20 minutes. That means get everybody off, get everybody on, right? As you were leaving the plane, the flight crew was cleaning the plane, right? Now they can't do the 20-minute turnaround time anymore because they really have to clean the plane, and that's what they're doing. All right. Here's one from Perel. I hope I pronounced that name right. Where can I fly as a U.S. citizen with fairly no problems? I'd really like to go to Pakistan right now. I don't have an answer for you on Pakistan. Although whatever you do, don't fly Pakistani Airlines, PIA. You know what happened to them? They got busted. 1/3 of their pilots had phony licenses. That's right. They had somebody else take the test. That's a whoops. So PIA has been banned in the U.S. now. They've been banned in the European Union. They've been banned in the U.K. So if you're going to Pakistan, it ain't going to be on PIA. At least I won't be on that plane with you. Arena says, no booze on the plane? So laugh out loud. Hey, yeah, well, try asking somebody who's afraid to fly about that who wants to drink. Here's one from Seth who says, how will the historic Israel-UAE agreement impact air travel between the two countries? It will establish it. You know, when it was just announced this morning, for those of you who don't know, it's somewhat symbolic and somewhat important that, Israel already has longstanding peace treaties with Jordan and with Egypt. It's still technically in a state of war with many Arab countries that never signed a peace treaty. That includes Syria and Saudi Arabia. But Egypt and Jordan are great. Today they signed a peace treaty starting diplomatic relations with the United Arab Emirates. I'm a big supporter of that idea. I think it's great. And the only thing that propels that idea is commerce and travel. And here comes airlift. So I would say within the next 60 days, you will see the announcement of scheduled service between those two countries. I might add, though, right now, El Al is grounded and will stay grounded for the next 4 months because they're out of money and they're waiting for a government bailout. Their planes are literally sitting on the ground. And if you're holding a ticket on El Al, they say you can use it in the future, and that's as specific as they've gotten. So, as they like to say, at least in Dubai, inshallah. All right. Nancy wants to know, what about Antigua? Antigua and Barbuda are open, but again, they're asking for a COVID test. Now, this is somewhat theatrical because if this goes back to my thing on testing. If you're doing a test and you don't get a result for 12 days, and when you get the result 12 days later, they say you were negative, what happened in the other 11 days? And is that the test you're going to show them when you enter Barbuda and Antigua? It's garbage. We need rapid result testing. Mary Robinson from Sheboygan, Michigan. Well, I went to school in Madison, Wisconsin, so I know Sheboygan, Wisconsin. And Sheboygan, Wisconsin spelled with an S. Sheboygan, Michigan, according to Mary, spelled with a C. Here's one from Lotte who says, under the new normal, over-tourism is not the way forward. Well, listen, that was our buzzword before the pandemic, right? They were actually thinking of putting turnstiles in St. Mark's Square in Venice. It was getting so bad. The Bridge of Sighs was the Bridge of Thighs. So we have a chance now. It was not intended, right? Beware the law of unintended consequences, but this is a benefit. Every country now has a chance to do-over. We're getting a do-over. We can now build tourism the right way, not with number of visitor numbers or looking at how many people are buying or what their average spend is, but creating a quality travel experience that doesn't involve mass assaults on a destination. And you will see, by the way, and this will apparently be happening first in the cruise industry, when they start cruising again, they're going to be under serious restrictions as to how many people can come off a ship at any one time. I don't care how many people the ship carries, but how many people can be on land at any one time. And you know what? It's not about how much they're spending for a straw hat or a t-shirt. It's about the impact they have on the environment and on the resources of every place they visit. So there are some good things that are coming from this. Here's one from Sherry who says, thank you for the insurance. Well, it's not just a great idea about redoing the policy language. It's a necessary and essential idea. And out of that comes innovation. I guarantee you, before the end of this year, there will be insurance policies written that are going to cover the things we need covered. Here's one. Juliana Gonzalez from Colombia. Yes, I can't wait to come back. I can't wait to come back. Right now, as you know, in South America, the airports there are on shutdown. In Argentina, they're not even opening their airspace until September 1st, and they may move that date back. No flights in and out. For those of you who are interested in going to Hawaii, by the way, I know you think that they're going to reopen on September 1. They haven't announced it yet. Sorry to break this to you. They're going to slide it back again to October. They are just not ready. Let's see. Oh, from Sherry. Hi from the OC. We want business travelers back. I think you want any travelers back. Okay, thoughts on national parks? Mary asked this. This is the summer of the Great American Road Trip. You can't rent an RV. They're so popular. And by the way, if you're going to rent an RV, please take the driving test before you leave the lot, because those right turns are a bitch. Okay, just telling you, speaking about insurance. But the national park campgrounds are going to be full. That's a no-brainer. It's the state parks that you want to go see. That's where you want to go. And for those of you who are going to be in RV, here's a little extra added attraction. A number of Walmarts around the United States are letting you park in their lots overnight for free, and they're even giving you free Wi-Fi. There you go. All right. Punta Mita. Okay. From Lillian, who says, I just flew on United Airlines to Punta, well, actually, to Mexico, and the plane was squeaky clean and the service was impeccable. I'd be interested to know how full the flight was, Lillian. Let me know. Uh, Here's one. What do you think about traveling to Las Vegas now? Well, what is Las Vegas by definition? Then the same definition as a theme park, right? Large social gatherings in somewhat confined spaces. So they've had to redefine their floor plan, not just in terms of their rooms, but the gambling areas, the gaming areas, as well as the entertainment venues. So, look, there's not much entertainment going on in Las Vegas right now, but they're just trying to get up and running. Uh, I mean, I've never played blackjack separated by like walls of plexiglass where you can't touch the cards and you can't touch the chips and you can't you can't touch yourself. Uh, but you know what? I'm trying to go just to see what it's like because so many people are asking that question. So after we go, we'll probably broadcast our radio show from there. Gail, I will let you know. Here's one from Michael. Any chance of getting to Ireland in November? And the answer is a qualified yes. Again, there will be quarantine restrictions in place, I guarantee you, and that's going to be, you'll be going to Ireland, but you may be there for 14 days. The real question is, will you have to quarantine in place in your hotel room for 14 days, which sort of defeats the purpose for going. I don't know the answer to that yet, but Ireland depends so much on the U.S. travel market. I guarantee you they're doing everything they can right now to figure out a way to safely reopen. Tim says, no vaccine for stupid. Right. Yeah, don't we know that? Here's one from Kate. Really unhappy with airlines being able to self-determine how far apart we are seated on an airplane. Last night I took was nearly full. That's just irresponsible. Well, Kate, I understand the optics here, but as I said before, the reason why there's a middle seat on an airplane was for the plane to be able to, for that seat to be sold. That's the reality. They didn't put it there for, for fluff. I applaud Delta and JetBlue for not selling those seats, but if I was going to be on a middle seat right now, I'd live with it because I love the HEPA filters. I love the air circulation that comes in and out of that plane, replaced every 3 minutes. And anybody who thinks that Delta or JetBlue come October 15th is going to continue to block the middle seats might be somewhat delusional. They'll be sold. All right. Question about where you can fly internationally as a U.S. citizen? Go to our website, petergreenberg.com. How long do you think Las Vegas will stay open? Well, let's qualify that as well. Not every casino and hotel is open in Las Vegas. Some of them have reopened. Some are actually, the MGM Grand is offering you to move there, and they'll give you a discount on the room if you want to work from there. So they're trying everything they can. So is Barbados, by the way. So has Bermuda. So is the former Soviet state of Georgia. If you want to move there for a year, look, we're all doing Zoom. I'm on Facebook right now. I mean, what's the difference? So it's all a matter of personal choice. Tim says, so far we have done an abysmal job in testing. What makes you think we can get effective, recognized rapid testing? Oh, I didn't think that we're going to do it soon. I'm thinking that's going to be the reason to be going back to travel. That's the tipping point. We get effective, recognized, and rapid testing, Tim. We're back. We're traveling. Do you think? Here's one from Kelly who says, do you think U.S. road tripping will become a boom? It already has. And by the way, I'm all in favor of it. This pandemic, I'm speaking to you from my place here in New York City, otherwise known as the Bunker. I've been here since the end of February. I'm born and raised here in New York, in Manhattan. And I've been doing a lot of walking lately. I'll do it every day. And I can tell you how much I didn't know about my own neighborhood, right? It's unbelievable. And just in 6 blocks from here, I learned stuff I didn't know about. Why? Because I'd always gone by in a taxi or a bus or taken the subway. Now I'm walking, I'm seeing things I never saw before. So it's not just road tripping, it's walking your own neighborhood. There's a lot to be said for that. And that's how we keep neighborhoods, by the way, by getting to know our neighbors. All right, what do we have here? Oh, yeah, I know that. Thank you so much. Yep, Juliana, you're right. I should definitely come back to Colombia. We want to do one of our royal tours there with President Duque, and we're hoping to do that next year. Hey, we got one. Hello from Myanmar. It's 11:18 at night. Well, now it's probably 11:45 at night where you are. Thank you. And you're a tour guide. Well, listen, it's the tour guides who are suffering right now. It's the people running the tour companies. with no business. There's no plan B. I hope you hang in there, and I hope to get back. And for those of you who have never been to Myanmar, I guarantee you, you'll have a great time. And I had a chance to actually sail it, the Mergui Archipelago, and nobody knows where that is. So you all have a homework assignment. But let's put it this way: 800 uninhabited islands, the Mergui Archipelago. Amazing. Hey, here's one from Debbie who says, I just came back from Disney World and so clean, nobody there. Well, it's an empty world after all. I worry about the theme park protocols because so much of it is about shared experience, right? And Debbie, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say, because I can't think of something less desirable than be on my own boat experiencing Pirates of the Caribbean. If you're going to put me on a roller coaster, I better be with somebody, because I'm going to scream. I can't scream by myself. So let me know how that works in terms of how they spaced you out. What was social distancing like? And of course, no character greetings. You can't hug Miggy. You can't hug Goofy. You can't. But the bottom line is, how long can they sustainably do that with fewer people? All right. From Balik, you come visit Sarajevo. Would love to do that. Okay. Here's one from Lorena who says, Nairobi is asking for COVID testing 96 hours before arrival, and it takes 2 days to get there. Well, my point exactly. All right. A lot of hellos. And the bottom line is this. I've got some more questions that you sent in I'll get to right now. All right. According to MIT, this is from Nelson. According to an MIT study, the chances of catching COVID-19 on a plane are really slim. How willing are you to fly? Well, that's my point that I said before. I've already flown. I'll fly again. I'm not being irresponsible. I'm doing it, and you can too. The real question here is infrastructure. When you get to where you're going, what's going to be there for you? Is there going to be a hotel that meets your standards? Is there going to be an attraction or a restaurant where you can eat? What's their definition of social distancing at the restaurant? In many cases, there's indoor dining in Florida, but at 50% capacity. Is that really, satisfying the CDC? I don't know. Okay, Andrew, you wrote about Cyprus pledging to cover costs if you test positive during your stay. How do you prove you contracted COVID while there? Well, you don't have to prove it. The point is, if you're there and you contract it, there you go, right? The whole idea is they're going to take care of you and get you home. Emirates, by the way, is doing the same thing. They're providing that kind of assurance. And you'll see more and more countries do that. Okay, here's one from Forrest. It says, last Thursday I got a voicemail saying I had 2 days to use my American Advantage mileage. Sure enough, they wiped out all my mileage. I won't be flying them ever again. Well, here's what American did. Hello, American. Very stupid. Nobody's flying your airline. Why would you eliminate my mileage when I can't fly the airline, right? So a lot of their frequent flyers got pissed off when all of a sudden their mileage banks disappeared. Well, good news for you, Forrest, and everybody else who had that experience. American has now changed their rules. Your mileage is back in. Give them a call. And if they have any problem with that, you know where to find me, peter@petergreenberg.com. All right? That's the key. All right, some more questions here. All right. Do you think Europe will open for travel? This is from Susan in 2020. No, I don't. No, it's going to be 2021. Dustin, I heard your segment on the radio about getting money back on a plane ticket when an airline changed your flight. Do you have a step-by-step process that I can follow? Yeah. Airline cancels your flight, not you. Airline cancels your flight. Call airline, demand refund. That's it. It's the United States Department of Transportation rule. Don't forget it. Now, the problem here is the current U.S. Department of Transportation is run by Elaine Chao, Mrs. Mitch McConnell, and they have a very anti-regulatory mood there. These USTOT rules weren't started by Elaine Chao. They were back to the Obama administration. So they haven't yet done an enforcement action. They've only sent letters of warnings to the airlines saying they were in violation of the rule. They haven't done an enforcement action. They need to do that. And when you write to them, you might want to suggest that if the airline doesn't give you your refund. Remember, there are a lot of people watching right now who were not offered the refund when they should have been and took a voucher instead. But if the airline canceled your flight, you can go back to them. Say, wait a minute, you canceled the flight. You knew that. You didn't volunteer that information. I want the refund. Cancel the voucher. Okay? Here's one from Mark. We have a Viking Ocean cruise to Italy to Israel, and back up through Greece in December. We have paid for trip insurance. Here we go. Couple things here. Number one, Mark, you're not taking the cruise. Vikings canceled for the rest of the year. So if they've canceled, right, and did you buy your cruise insurance through Viking, they should give you a full refund for both the cruise and the insurance. At the very least, they're going to give you a voucher for the cruise, good through, I think, 2022. So check that out. But I don't think you're cruising in 2020. All right? I mean, that's just the bottom line. The real problem here is that the airlines are bleeding money still. The cruise lines are bleeding money. Carnival is bleeding money at the rate of $695 million a month. Norwegian is right behind them. So is Royal Caribbean. They're doing their best to come up with a plan that the CDC will approve, but it's not going to be implemented in time for this year. It's just realistically not going to happen. So they're just trying to hold on to all the bookings they can and then slide them over to next year. So if you have a cruise booking for the rest of this year, my advice is deal with it now. Get your voucher for next year or get a refund. And then, you know what? Short of an RV, figure out a place you can go within 300 miles of home where you can feel safe, socially distanced, responsible, and at least enjoy America. There are so many places to see this summer and so many different ways to do it. You don't have to do the big long haul road trip like I did when I was in college. 300 miles, one day, one tank trips, you know, put your feet in the water, dip them in, and go. That's really what you have to do. This Saturday, by the way, please join us for my weekly CBS radio show called Eye on Travel. It airs 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's Eastern Time. It also streams live. If you go to petergreenberg.com, you'll see the radio icon. You can listen anywhere in the world as long as it's at that time. If you miss that, it comes out as a podcast 3 or 4 days later. Eye on Travel again is the name. If you have any more questions for me after this, go right to peter@petergreenberg.com. We will answer those on the radio show and, of course, online as well. And I'll be back next week to take more of your questions and give you another update. I hope this is helpful for you. It's going to get better. But remember, we need to come up with one, a definition of terms that's mutually agreeable to you and the travel provider. Number two, and I always say that this actually be number one. Number one should be never take a no from somebody who's not empowered to give you a yes in the first place, especially now. Always get somebody who's in control, who can override that block on the computer or override a stupid policy and understand your particular situation. Because we are all in a particular situation, 99% of which is not of our doing. And that's important to know. And number three, be patient and lobby for what? Widespread, rapid result testing. I've got a few more questions before we say goodbye. Here's one from Corinne who says, she just looked up the Mergui Archipelago, the least visited place on Earth. There you go. Richard says, Airbnb is allowing me to cancel under COVID policy, but is offering a fee refund as a credit. Is that normal? Nothing's normal with Airbnb right now because the question is, do they have control over their own vendors? And I don't know the answer to that. It's on a case-by-case basis. Again, nothing takes the place of having a conversation directly with the operator. Don't just go for the franchise. Go for the franchisee and make sure you're all talking the same language. All right? Here's one from Mary who goes, our visitor bureau would love for you to broadcast out of Hell, Michigan. Hell yes! I'll do it. Mary, let me know. All right? Write me, peter@petergreenberg.com. My guys will get in touch with you. Our show travels. Our radio show normally is broadcasting 52 weeks a year on the road. This has been a weird year, but we're going back to travel starting later this month, and we'd love to see you in Michigan. Here's one from Sherry. Wish they would open Disneyland. Hey, talk to the lawyers right now. It's all about liability. You can't do it without certain protocols in place, and you can't have those protocols in place without limiting admission and also limiting individual time at the park. They have to figure that out first. And most importantly, they got to protect their own workers. And are they doing that yet? Right now, I don't think so. They have to do a better job. Here's one from Jerry who says, I want to visit Manila or the old Clark Air Force Base in the Philippines. And both destinations require an arrival COVID-19 test plus the 14-day quarantine. So the answer really is, you know the answer. Yes, you can quit. You can visit Manila or Clark. You know you're gonna have to have the COVID-19 test before you show up, and then there's the 14-day quarantine. Here's the interesting thing about the 14-day quarantine. It's the enforcement of that quarantine. In certain locations around the world, you can't leave your hotel room. They know you're there, and they're going to track you on your cell phone. Everything short of the electronic ankle bracelet. In other destinations around the world, they don't have the resources to do that. By the way, when I returned from Tampa to Islip Airport, I was greeted at the airport by New York State health officials who asked me to fill out a form attesting to that I was not displaying any symptoms of COVID-19. I was going to quarantine for 14 days in New York. I was going to give them my cell phone number and my address. I could have put down Alfred E. Newman on that piece of paper. Nobody cared about it. Nobody double checked what I wrote against my driver's license or my phone. They didn't monitor anything. And by the way, for the 14 days I stayed here, it's been longer than that now, of course, nobody followed up with a call. So the honor system in this country where we have no discipline, and in many states we have no intelligence, is up for grabs. But the 14-day quarantine in the Philippines, I would almost bet my career, is not being thoroughly enforced, although you have to say you're going to do it. If you can give up 14 days to go to the Philippines, and by the way, I would do it in a heartbeat. The Philippines is more than 8,500 of the most beautiful islands in the world. I used to go all the time. I can't wait to go back. I would do it. There you go. And from Ellie, who says, I've heard virologists say that hotels still aren't a very safe bet. Too much hit and miss and lots of surfaces that could get overlooked. Well, listen, you take nothing for granted. You're still going to show up there with as much hand sanitizer as you can, alcohol-based. And you know what? Wipe off every surface that you're going to touch. Take the bedspread and throw it in the corner. You're never going to use it anyway. And then go in the bathroom and do what I always do. And by the way, this is all pre-pandemic. You know, you wipe off the TV remote control, and that's got the highest level of bacteria normally, the telephone handset, and then you go in the bathroom. This is what nobody ever does. And you take the 2 drinking glasses, even if they're wrapped, open them, put them under hot water for 2.5 minutes, then you're good to go. All right? And I'll go to any hotel that way. And here's one from Tim saying, and the walking is healthier for you. Yes, it is. Absolutely. Here's one from Brian with a report from Las Vegas. Vegas is not bad for gaming now. Sahara didn't open tables until 10 a.m. Caesars was packed because they funneled some of their closed hotel bookings there. Never saw plexiglass at blackjack tables, but spots 2 and 4 blocked for 3 maximum players. Okay, but you didn't tell me, Brian. Did you win? All right. Socially distanced win. I want to know about that. Here's one from, will American Express Delta extend the use of the free companion flight? It's paid for by annual membership. They should. And the same thing about the Chase card. You know, a lot of people will get the Chase card, get the United Airlines, the Red Carpet Club or the club. And it's automatically renewed every year. But what happens if they automatically renew your card, which has a big fee, and the clubs aren't open? They need to address that. And something tells me they will. Okay? And let's see if we got a few more questions before we're off. Do you think there will be Alaskan cruises next June? The answer to that lies in Canada, not here. There would have been an Alaskan cruise season this year, maybe, but Canada closed all their ports through October 31st. And in doing that, they took away the opportunity for anybody to cruise to Alaska because, as anybody knows who cruises to Alaska, there's something called the Jones Act, which allows no ship that's not registered in the U.S. to sail between any 2 U.S. ports without stopping in a foreign port first, which explains why so many Alaskan cruises leave from Vancouver. So right now, it's up to the Canadian government. Something tells me next June they will open it up if there's testing. I'm going back to testing again. And by the way, I hope they do. Again, join me on the radio this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Ion Travel is the name of the show. Check your local listings or go right to our website, petergreenberg.com. So hit that icon button to listen. You can always reach me to peter@petergreenberg.com with any more questions that you have. We'll answer it online or on the radio. And I'll see you next week, more than likely, right from here, the bunker in New York. Bye, everybody.